What's going on, y'all? It's Dawhveed, and today's video is going to be another signature build of mine for solo Mayhem 4 content in Borderlands 3. This time I am doing a cryo build using the redistributor to freeze enemies and blow through them with tons of damage. So without any further ado, I present you all my Cry0mancer Flak build for Mayhem 4. As with all of my other build guides, I first like to go over the skill tree and briefly cover what skills I chose and why, as well as go over some other viable alternative options should you want to use other skills. First, we'll head on over to the Hunter tree with 5 points in the Interplanetary Stalker for the DPS bonuses that it gives. Next, I like to max out Leave No Trace because this is going to be a Megavore build, and this skill goes perfectly with Megavore. Also on this first tier, I like to max out Second Intention for this build because it gives me increased reload speed, which is incredibly important, I feel, really, for sustaining DPS for long periods of time. Basically, less time reloady equals more time shooty. On line 2, I like to max out head count because this skill also synergizes perfectly with Megavore, and the idea of this build is to use your action skill as much as possible because we're relying on our anointments that proc once our action skill ends. Now we can jump all the way to the 4th tier and max both of these out. The Most Dangerous Game is an extremely useful kill skill damage buff, and Big Game increases the effectiveness and duration of our hunter skills, such as the Most Dangerous Game. These two pretty much go hand in hand and fit well into a heavy sustaining DPS build for Mayhem 4. Moving on to the next tier, if you watch my build videos, you already know that I always put the point into Galactic Shadow, and you probably know how I feel about this skill. But if you don't watch my videos, in short, I absolutely love this skill, and I think it's basically criminal to just not put the single point here for the ability to not be targeted a lot and for a whole 15% increase to crit damage. Then to get access to the capstone, I just like to put 2 points into Grim Harvest for the minor damage boost it provides, and lastly I put the point into Megavore to gain the ability to crit anywhere on enemies. As for alternative skill points in this tree, I do recommend putting points into Hunter's Eye if you are running a Bounty Hunter class mod for the crazy value that it gives you, and I also recommend that if you choose the higher damaging guns like the brainstormer or even some launchers, to put the points from Second Intention into Two Fang instead. Okay, now we can head on over to the Stalker tree and start by putting 5 points into Furious Attack. This skill is not just a damage buff, but it also is a hunter skill which gets its effectiveness and duration buff from Big Game. On tier 2, I like to max out Overclocked for this build because with the redistributor you want to be firing as fast as possible to get the most out of its special ability, and this skill just helps you accomplish that. Also, combined with Second Intention, you quickly get the bonus fire rate after reloading, and it just feels really fluid during the gameplay. On this same line, I like to add 2 points into Eager to Impress for the same reason that I maxed out head count. I just want to have my action skill as low of a cooldown as I can. I then like to go down and max out Turntail and Run because it's a very flexible situational skill that you can easily navigate between options to use. You can either DPS or safely move around and reposition yourself. On tier 4, I first max out the Fast and the Furious, mainly because of the damage buff that it gives, but also because movement speed is one of my favorite stats in this kind of game. It translates to not just moving fast, but also into pseudo damage reduction and even damage itself because of the ability to reposition quicker. The last 4 points I just dump into Hidden Machine because this skill is a giant raw power boost against enemies that aren't targeting you, and with this build they shouldn't be targeting you very often. As for alternative skill points here, Self-Repairing System is a good alternative to damaging skills. It just gives you a little more bulk so you don't die as easily. Also, Lick the Wounds is a very impactful skill if you find yourself going down multiple times in a run, and that's about it for other good options here. As for the action skill, the augments for it, and the pet choice, I will also cover what I use and other notable options. Firstly, I use Fade Away as my action skill here because it's an incredible mix of offense and defense and is used as a catalyst for DPSing and also a defense mechanism to reposition yourself from a bad spot. As for the Augment Combinations, I use Not My Circus and Unblinking Eye. In my opinion, these two are the best augments right now for meta Fade Away builds for Mayhem 4. Maybe Until You Are Dead can replace Unblinking Eye, but Not My Circus is definitely a must-have here. Not My Circus makes your pet taunt and gives it an enormous damage reduction buff once your Fade Away ends, and that combined with Galactic Shadow keeps you generally safe and activates your Hidden Machine damage buff. Unblinking Eye is just some nice added DPS, but until you are dead is still very useful for the extra generated movement speed and HP regen. For the pet, I really enjoy using the Spider Ant Scorcher, mainly for the elemental damage buff that she gives, but also because I have a soft spot for spider-like creatures. You can also use like either of the jabbers if you prefer movement speed buffs, or even the other Spider Ant if you enjoy some more damage reduction. Now that the skill tree is done, we can talk about my favorite part of this build and what mostly gives this build its identity, the gear. Just like the skill tree, I will cover what I use and what you can use if you want more options or just don't have this gear. First off, the main weapon that the build is built around, the immaculate cryo redistributor with on-action skill end, weapon status effect damage, and chance are increased by 75% for a short time. This is a weapon I've been wanting to build a build around for Flak for a long time, and I finally got it to work incredibly well. Basically, after fadeaway ends, this gun freezes just about any enemy that it gets hit by it, and since the redistributor chains every 7th shot, nearby enemies also get frozen. This gun is pretty much irreplaceable in this build. It has amazing damage and does a fantastic job at freezing enemies. If you really need to use something else because you either just don't like this gun or just don't have this gun, I really only recommend the cryo recursion with the same anoint or the brainstormer with the same anoint, but the brainstormer doesn't have the innate cryo efficiency since it only can come as shock damage. Now I normally go into the shield and grenade mods next, but this time I want to skip ahead and cover the artifact first because it's far more important in this build. I use the Icebreaker Auto Idol, which gives me back 18% health from killing an enemy, and more importantly, it increases my damage against frozen enemies. The added bonuses that it gives me are an increase to magazine size, increase the action skill cooldown rate, and an increased cryo efficiency. Now magazine size is honestly just one of my favorite things to have because more shooty equals less reloady equals more damage. Action skill cooldown is just what I need to repeat fadeaways, and cryo efficiency gives me an increased chance to slow the enemy down enough to freeze them. By far the best artifact for this kind of build. Everything just synergizes with something in the skill tree or with the gun, or just basically not a stat is wasted. If you don't have a good icebreaker, I really think you should just find any icebreaker to use with cryo efficiency, but if you really don't want to, well, just suck it up because it's part of the build. But seriously, you really just want at least an icebreaker. If you don't have one, then whatever your favorite artifact is with cryo efficiency could work, but you will be missing out on a lot of damage. Okay, so on to the shield and grenade combo now. So for the shield, I just use a stopgap with a cryo damage ASE anoint, and for the grenade, I use a firestorm with the incendiary damage anoint. The stopgap here is just basically, well, a stopgap. It just keeps me alive when I position badly or get hit by like some stray launcher or something in the slaughter shaft. When I run takedown, I prefer the transformer for the shock enemies there, and there's a lot more room to play like and hide safely. The cryo damage anoint is just for extra cryo damage to freeze people, so pretty black and white there. The grenade itself doesn't actually matter too much because I don't ever really throw the grenade because I just prefer shooting with this kind of build, and the anoint is mainly for the COV flesh health enemies, so nothing special. You're pretty much free to use whatever you prefer in this slot, whatever your favorite grenade is and whatever anoint you like. If you are running takedown, I do recommend some form of shock damage here, however, whether that be in the form of the grenade or the anointment or both. Lastly, the class mod. This spot, other than the grenade, is probably the most flexible spot on this build because Flak has a good range of class mods depending on what you want to accomplish. The one that I used for this video is this one. Even though I'm not using rack attack, I took this because of the extra skill points it gives me in a Grim Harvest, head count, and pack tactics, and more importantly the Hyperion crit damage and weapon damage. Here are the other options that you can use instead. A Bounty Hunter for the chance to activate hunt skills and the insane boss ability, a Cosmic Stalker for the hunt skill power increase which stacks with the points it can roll into big game, a Deadeye for extra 2 Fang points, a Friend Bot for the Barbaric Yacht points and the Pet Second Wind ability, or a Stack Bot for the critical hit weapon buff. Something that I like to do at the end of my videos after going over the gear and the skill tree is go over the gameplay briefly and how I recommend you play this build for mobbing and for bossing. For mobbing, it's pretty self-explanatory, but you can fade away whenever it's off cooldown and get into a good position, and then fire away in hopes of freezing as many enemies as you can as fast as you can. By the time you take out 1 or 2 enemies, your fadeaway should be back up again to rinse and repeat. Remember to stand still while shooting to get the most damage from turntail and run, and don't be afraid to cut out early and reload for the fire rate bonus and then try again. I recommend aiming for the larger health targets first because they soak up more bullets, allowing you to ricochet your redistributor more often and freeze more enemies. As for bossing, this one is tricky because this build is reliant on freezing the enemy, and many bosses are immune to being completely frozen. Instead, you will have to alter the build a little to a 100/125 damage redistributor and another artifact to replace the icebreaker. Then the concept is pretty much fade away into spray and pray and dodge whatever the boss throws at you. Pretty generic stuff. And that is going to do it for my signature Cry0mancer Flak build. If you liked the build video, please make sure to go rack attack that thumbs up button because it helps my channel out a ton, and you guys are really what motivate me to put out all this awesome content. If you're looking for gear for this build, come swing by my Discord, and myself or several others that are there are happy to help you, and we all love chatting and meeting new people. I'll leave the link for that in the pinned comment below. I'm also currently doing a special 1K subscriber giveaway in the channel, so definitely go swing by there for that. If you have any questions or just anything that you want to tell me, make sure to fade away into the comment section below and leave me a message because I read and reply to every single one. Lastly, make sure you go gamma burst that subscribe button and notification bell to stay up to date on all the content for Borderlands 3 that I'm pumping out. And as always, thank you so much for watching to the end, and I'll check you all in the next video. See ya!